Welcome to this classical banjo lesson. I'm John Bullard. Thanks for dropping in. Today's lesson we'll be talking about arpeggios for banjo, and specifically these will be triad arpeggios as opposed to seventh chord arpeggios. So a triad arpeggio is the root, the third, and the fifth of each major and minor chord. And the material in this lesson today comes from this book that I did with Mel Bay, Scales and Arpeggios for Classical Banjo. And I'll include a link for this book in the description. And also, most of the material for today's lesson comes from the first page, so I'll put a free PDF link in the description as well. The system that I devised for doing these arpeggios is a closed position system, and this means that there are no open strings used. And the reason I did it this way is so that these arpeggio shapes would be uniform and movable all over the neck, and we'll see how that works as we move forward. So let's just start with triad arpeggios for G major. Now in G major, we're going to be connecting this F-shaped G, and then the D-shaped G, the bar G, and all the way up to this F-shaped G. And we'll be playing the root, third, and fifth as we go up and down the neck. We're going to start this G major arpeggio on the fourth string at the fifth fret, which is a G. And then we'll move up and use our third finger on the fourth string again at the ninth fret for a B. And then putting our index finger on the third string, which is a D, and that gives us our first octave of the arpeggio. Now we're going to slide up and continue by sliding our first finger up to the third string 12th fret, which gives us our root, again G. And then we put our second finger right above that on the second string 12th fret for the B. And then we shift again and slide that second finger up to the 15th fret on the second string, which gives us the D, which is the fifth. And then finally our pinky comes in on the 17th fret for the upper octave G. So now let's look at G major's relative minor, which is E minor. And we're going to use the same pattern, the same template for the arpeggio. The only difference is we're going to be making a little bit of an adjustment for allowing a minor third, which makes the chord minor. So we're going to start with this E on the fourth string, second fret for the root. Then slide up with the second finger on the fourth string at the fifth fret for the minor third, G. And then first finger on the third string, fourth fret for the fifth or B. So that first octave of the triad of the arpeggio is. Next we're going to go to the next octave of E minor, and we're going to go up with our second finger to the ninth fret third string for an E, or our root again. And then we go to the second string 8th fret with our index finger for the minor third. And then we're going to slide up to the 12th fret with our second finger for the fifth. So that second octave would be. And then we're going to finish off just like we did in the G major with our pinky on the first string of the 14th fret. So that whole E minor arpeggio would be like this. So up and down. So that is the template for both our major and our minor triad arpeggio all over the neck in all of the keys. The right hand fingering for these arpeggios is mostly thumb and index with the middle finger coming in at the very end of each arpeggio. So here's the right hand fingering. I do start with the index at the root. So on the G major it would be index, thumb, index, thumb, index, thumb, middle. Index, thumb, index, thumb, index, thumb, middle. And that is the same fingering in the major and the minor triads. In my book, I have an exercise called the continuous study for arpeggios. And in this study, what I do is play through all of the arpeggios, major and minor, starting with G major, going to its relative minor, E minor, and then moving to the next key in the circle of fifths, which would be D major, then its relative minor, B minor, and so on, so that I play through all of the circle of fifths, all keys, major and minor. And it's a great exercise to learn the fingerboard, see how the keys lay out on the fingerboard, and to actually learn the notes on each string. To play this continuous study, to make it flow better, I add some melodic content at the end of each arpeggio to make things connect better. For example, at the end of the G major arpeggio, I add this. And that leads us into the E minor. So I'll play the G major and lead into the E minor. Now at the end of the E minor, I do the same thing, is I would add a little melodic phrase to lead into the next major key, which would be D major. I'll play the E minor and lead into the D major as an example. Now, one thing to watch out for when you're playing this continuous study and going all the way around the circle of fifths with the major and minor triad arpeggios is that due to the banjo's very limited range, there are several places where we have to transpose an octave to make the next arpeggio work. An example of that would be when we get to the end of E major, and the next relative minor would be C sharp minor. So at the end of E major, we don't have enough low notes to go down to that C minor, so we have to go up. So it would sound like this. There are several other places where you have to jump the octave, so to speak, to get to the next arpeggio, whether it be major or minor. So check that out in the back of the book. And it's also a great exercise in learning the fingerboard is when you realize you're running out of room either at the top or the bottom, is to figure out the next logical place or way to play that arpeggio. And that's a really great way to learn how the different keys lay out on the fingerboard and where they are, and to begin to learn your notes on the fingerboard as well. As you can see, we started on G major and then ended up with C major going into A minor. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on Triad Arpeggios for banjo. It will really help you learn the fingerboard and gain some dexterity in your left hand to work on these.